So let's see what arises for us when we put together three well-known, simple Buddhist stories to create an allegory that may perhaps have the possibility of bringing awareness to us of where it is that we are. First, there's that story of the young man who was so disgruntled with life. He'd tried all the diversions, the indulgences of youth, none of them bringing any satisfaction to him. So he set out to wander aimlessly from place to place to place. But one evening, in the late of evening, he found himself in the land of the rising sun, in front of a gate, a monastery gate. He knocked on the door and was given entry and ushered into the little reception hall where it was the custom for the abbot to come out and greet visitors. So when the abbot came out and greeted the young man, he said, "What is it that you're here for?" And the young man replied, I don't even know how I found myself here." "Oh," said the abbot, "is there anything in your life that you have a love for, that you enjoy?" The young man cast around in his mind, thinking of all the aimless things that he'd done, the useless indulgences he'd had. And then he said, "Oh, I do love playing chess." "Oh," said the abbot, "we have someone who loves to play chess also. Would you like a game?" The young man said, well, yes." So the abbot called his attendant and said, "Go and bring the old monk. Oh, but before you do, take down that ancient sword that's hanging over the doorway there. It's still sharp." So the attendant went, and in came the old monk. He was wizened and bent from many years of toil and meditation. And the abbot turned to him and said, "You've been in this monastery for decades and decades now, and you've served well the purpose of your life. I want you to play chess with this young man. But if you lose, I will lop your head. You will be sure to go to the heavenly realms because of your good life." And then the abbot turned and looked at the young man, and the young man knew, without him speaking, that the same fate awaited him if he lost the game. So the chessboard was bought and set up, and the two sat across from one another, and it seemed that as the game progressed, they were very evenly matched, until there came a moment when the young man saw he had an advantage over the old monk. And just as he was about to make that move, he looked up. He looked up at the old monk, wizened, lined and wrinkled, but with a face that was so serene. And a great wave rose up in the young man, and he made the move which gave advantage to the old monk. The old monk was about to take that final movement when the old abbot came over and tossed up the table, tipping all the pawns on the floor. And he said, "There is no game." And looking at the young man, he said, you have demonstrated humility and compassion. Stay with us a while. The second story is that story also in the monastery where the abbess was famous for being wise, noble and wise. Many people came there to seek entry to this monastery to gain the wisdom of the old abbess. But she had a custom. Anyone who entered the monastery seeking entry would be given a test. Not all, but some she took by the hand, led down the garden path to a hedge. Now, it was not seen by the naked eye, but there in the hedge there was an opening. And she led the seeker through the opening and said, "Take this path, follow it where it takes you." And the seeker would go off along the pathway, following its meanderings until it reached a bend. And when they turned the bend, there in front of them on the path was a mirror. Now, a number of those who came to this mirror looked in it and saw strange things. Some saw their past lives being played before their eyes. Some saw the demons, some saw their relatives. All manner of manifestations appeared in the mirror. Some were so afraid that they turned back and ran. Others took stones and threw them at the mirror, trying to break the mirror so that they could pass. Some tried to find their way past the mirror and found themselves in brambles, lost in bushes that they could not pass. And very few came and pressed their nose against the mirror. And when they did, the mirror disappeared, and they found themselves in a garden such as they had never seen before. And there in front of them was the old abbess, who handed them a spade with a great smile on her face. The third Buddhist story is that story of the same monastery and the wise abbess who had an assembly one day and was giving a dissertation on the Buddhist precepts. When one of those in the assembly stood up, and from the depths of his soul he cried, "I have been in this monastery for decades, and still I have not reached nirvana. What can I do?" "Oh," said the old abbess, "there is nothing left for you to do but go to the room of the red door." Everyone in the assembly gasped, "No, the room with the red door." Because it was known anyone who entered that room never returned. The room was along the cloister, and even all of those who were in the monastery would make a wide berth of that entry door. It conjured fear in the hearts of all. But the abbess took the hand of the one who had spoken and led him down into the cloister to the doorway, which opened into the room of the red door. She had a key in her pocket. She placed it in the lock and opened the door and shoved the being in, closing the door, and he could hear the key turn in the lock. And there he stood. It was dark, but as his eyes became accustomed to the darkness, he could see in the distance the red door. But as his eyes widened, he could see that from where he stood to where the red door was placed was an abyss, a deep, deep abyss, a void. And he felt himself standing on the tiniest of ledges inside the doorway which led to the room. As he looked and listened, he imagined that he heard roars and saw flames coming up from out of the great hole. And he trembled and shook with fear. As he stood for the first day, all he could hear was the sounds of the roaring and see the flames coming forth. And he clung to the ledge with all his might. But then the second day came, and his stomach was grumbling. The fear was great, so he called, shouted, and banged on the door, let me out. No one came. On the third day, as he stood, the red door loomed, and he thought to himself, all of these years I have longed for liberation. What is this liberation? If I must pass through the red door to find it, then I will do so. And he stepped out into the abyss. And as he did, his foot found itself placed on another ledge, and with each step the ledge opened up for him, until finally he found himself at the door, the red door. Does this make an allegory for us? Can we relate to each of these stories with our own story? Where are we now Are we still standing in fear, imagining what the abyss holds? Are we banging on the door, let me out? Have we recalled all of this long pathway? Are we remembering our quest? Have we surrendered? Have we stepped out? Where are we in this allegory? What is it that the red door represents for us? Or has it been obliterated? All our imaginings lost. Only the red door remains. Is it like a mirror that we stand in front of and press our noses against so that it disappears? What is this red door represent for us?